Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Back talking about the Remedy Connected Universe way earlier than I expected, because the fine people over at Remedy decided to surprise release the subject of today's video while I was working on the Alan Wake 2 video. And that video was long enough on its own, so here we are. We're taking a look at Alan Wake 2's Night Springs DLC, the first of the 2 DLC stories planned for the game. It was announced at Summer Games Fest alongside physical editions of the game with the release date of
now. You're looking at now, sir. Everything that happens now is happening now.
What happened to then?
We passed then.
When?
Just now. We're at now.
Go back to then.
When?
Now.
Now?
Now.
I can't.
Why?
We missed it.
When?
Just now.
When will then be now?
Soon.
with Sam Lake explaining the DLC as a series of what-if scenarios that allow them to be more crazy than they already are.
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
So surely this won't have any implication on the lore that will lead to more long-winded explanations about the inner workings of a completely fictional reality, right?
Wrong!
So turn your dials, set your DVRs, and journey with me to Night Springs. Night Springs is split into 3 different episodes, with each one focused on a different character. So let's get started with episode 1, Number 1 Fan. After some opening narration from our gracious host Warlin Door, we get a fancy title card accompanied by the very important detail that this episode was written by Alan Wake. And, so I don't have to repeat myself, all 3 of these were written by him. We join the beloved waitress of Night's Diner, and episode 1's protagonist, as she daydreams about her wake-shaped destiny and serves the citizens of Night Springs. Citizens like Gossipy Girl from the Bank, Guy Who Only Eats Burgers, and Lady with 7 Corgis.
The gang's all here.
This is consistent with Alan's script for a Night Springs episode that's in control. He doesn't refer to anyone by name, just by descriptors. Just to save time, I'm gonna call her Rose. Rose's day of pouring coffee and sharing sanguine sentiments with sappy yappers is interrupted by Alan crying out for help through her talking fish. But before she can save her love, she has to accessorize
my accessories. Everything a girl needed to claim victory in the battle for love. My trusty 12 gauge, fully automatic. Extreme circumstances call for extreme shotguns. My bolt-action hunting rifle with a gorgeous walnut stock. Deadly, and looks good doing it. Just like me.
As Rose leaves the town to the sounds of cheers and clapping from every resident, I want to point out just how perfectly this story emulates bad fanfiction writing. It's the type of so bad it's good writing that only really good writers can pull off. Anyone with any experience reading bad fanfiction will immediately recognize the tropes here. The constant praise for the female protagonist, with characters awkwardly pointing out all the amazing things she's done, apropos of nothing.
I saw in the news that you saved every single kitten from that bear attack. Amazing!
And writing that is overly flowery and trying so desperately to be deep without having the grace or flow to pull it off.
You spend all your time wishing and hoping and dreaming for something, and then, bam! Destiny shows up at your door like a mailman with a package you were pretty sure got lost because you ordered it like 6 months ago.
And it only gets better when Rose meets the bad boy. The wild and estranged twin brother of Rose's beloved is jealous of his success, so abducted him with help from an army of people who hate his writing. So it's up to Rose to rise to the occasion and fight off the haters with help from her fully automatic pump-action shotgun.
I got 57 more goddamn rounds in this 4-round magazine.
This DLC is a lot more action-oriented than the base game, so Rose gets plenty of ammunition to blast away all the people who dare say that Alan Wake's writing is confusing. Who would say that? That's just crazy.
Him. Come on in! Here he is! Yeah!
She follows the bad boy's flaming motorcycle trail to a cabin, where the Ghost Rider says he's waiting upstairs for the final confrontation.
Where are you?
I was never upstairs. I lied when I said there were no more tricks.
You're starting to peeve me off, mister.
Oh, he crossed a line with that one. Now he's gonna get it.
You're rude, you have no manners, your too cool to care attitude is attractive initially, but drives people away after they realize you're emotionally incapable of letting your walls down to reveal that you are a vulnerable human being just like everybody else. You are trying way too hard with that outfit.
No, stop! I don't like being seen!
The bad boy tells Rose that his hater army is storming Alan's mansion as they speak, so Rose has to slay her way to him. TBB is tired of the tricks and is ready to scratch Alan and Rose out once and for all, so he fights Rose with the power of love, while Rose fights him for the power of love. Mid-fight, he reveals to Rose that he's actually a werewolf, and makes sure to classify that Alan is not. But you know who else is also a werewolf? His motorcycle. With the bad boy and the werehog defeated, Rose is free to ascend the mansion and save her rider.
And there he was. After all the fighting, we were finally alone. Together. Our love was written in the stars. And so we danced like two spinning planets that would eventually crash into each other in a dazzling display of flames and rocks and other planet stuff. He told me all the sweet things I'd been waiting a lifetime to hear. I saw myself reflected in his eyes. I would always be at his side, to inspire and protect him. He needed me, now and forever. After all, I am his #1 fan.
And with the conclusion of episode 1, we get to hear the Night Springs theme song. And it's amazing. Similarly, this episode is also amazing. I can't do it justice just by talking about it because there are so many great lines throughout the entire thing that really make it hard for Rose not to be one of everyone's favorite Remedy characters. The heightened focus on action also works in its favor as we get the contrast of this sweet small-town waitress and her carrying enough ammo for a whole militia just so she can ban her love's critics from life itself.
Yeah, you're banned. Matter of fact, we're gonna get you banned off the internet too. We're not stopping here. We're getting you banned off the face of the earth at this point.
I'll go more into a full explanation once we're at the end so I can do it all at once, but this was a fantastic start to the DLC. Let's see if they can keep things shining bright in episode 2, North Star. We join the sibling as she arrives at Coffee World in search of her missing brother, and the government agency that took him. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to call her Jessie, even though it's not the same Jessie that we know. She explores the shadows of the amusement park and meets the sheriff, who tells her that the government is putting something in the coffee and turning people into coffee monsters as a part of deep state science. Looks like Alex Jones has met his match. There's definitely some shady shit going on though, and it might have something to do with this new Coffee World logo that looks suspiciously like the icon from Quantum Break. Luckily, the sheriff gives Jessie a pistol and a flashlight, and aims her beam toward the nearby government warehouse. From this point forward, we're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again. Jessie needs to answer 3 security questions to get inside the warehouse, so she has to explore Coffee World to find each answer and report back to the intercom every time. All the while fighting through shadow monsters like in Alan Wake's gameplay sections, just without all the tension because in what was apparently a development oversight because it has since been patched, Jessie has a scientifically measured assload of ammunition. First, she has to watch the Dark Triangle Coffee orientation video to find the 4th word of their mission statement, which she gets with an assist from Polaris, who helps her resist the tape's brainwashing. Next, she has to quite literally actually calculate the optimal roasting temperature of the coffee using the clues on the posters and also math. It's 487 degrees. Finally, Jessie has to try the coffee. And she's able to resist the change with another hot tag to Polaris. She enters the warehouse after forfeiting her weapons and has to evade monstrous coffee mascots to find a key to enter the office. Apparently this is supposed to be hard, or at least challenging, as there's a trophy for doing it in 2 tries or less without getting caught, but I did it first try, and rather quickly, as you see here.
Locked. To keep people out or in? Finally. Let's get back to that door.
The promised mug has been found.
Inside the office, Jesse sees that the sheriff has been consumed by coffee and ventures further down to find her brother.
Hello, sister. I would like to tell you about a dream I had.
You know, Dylan really looks like Alan Wake in this lighting. And that's the end of North Star. It's a lot less eventful than episode 1. It's also not as good, and kind of a disappointment considering it's been 5 years since we've seen Jesse and all we get is a strange pseudo-retelling of Control that heavily relies on you thinking coffee is hilarious. I feel like there was a lot more they could have done with this, instead of basically 3 fetch quests. Episode 1 didn't really have any purpose other than being fun, but at least it had its own style and camp that made it stand out. This just felt like the base game, but worse. They fumbled a bit, but there's still time to stick the landing with Episode 3, Timebreaker. We joined the actor Shawn Ashmore in the middle of filming Poison Pill Entertainment's newest game, Timebreaker, directed by Sam Lake, who says without saying it that Timebreaker is a sequel to Quantum Break. In Timebreaker, Shawn Ashmore plays a multiversal agent searching for his love while Mr. Door, the master of many worlds, hunts him and all his multiverse counterparts. Shawn's character also goes by many different names since there are many different versions of him across the multiverse, naming Breaker and Branch as specific examples. Sam talks about how Shawn's experience with cool superheroes makes him the perfect person to play this agent, who will undoubtedly become a fiery superhero in gaming, in what is probably a nod toward Quantum Break's expectations at Microsoft to be their next big franchise alongside Gears of War and Halo. And you know, with the upcoming release of Quantum Break 5, that really paid off for them. Next up on what is essentially Sam Lake grabbing us by the shoulders and explaining his confusing universe to us, is his interpretation of the multiverse. In this world, the multiverse is way more than a series of infinite Earths operating under the same rules of reality where only key choices are different. For example, in Earth where the Nazis won World War II, or in Earth where Sly Cooper got a 5th game. The multiverse in the Remedy universe is an energy that can seep into the minds of others in the forms of inspiration and dreams. And not every world in the multiverse has to operate under the same logic and reality. For example, on the Earth those two are on, they are actually having that conversation. On another Earth, they are characters in a video game. And on another Earth, they're playing the video game. And on another Earth, the character Shawn is playing is a real person.
Bro, what did you just say?
Shawn's reaction to this information sums it up better than I could ever hope to.
Right. Yeah, right, Sam. You are a maniac, man. Totally.
I'm not the first person to say this, but it really sounds like this wasn't a scripted conversation. They just pointed a mic towards Shawn Ashmore and Sam Lake while they were talking and decided to put it in the game. Our final stop on this Exposition Express is learning about all the timey-wimey gadgets Shawn's character uses, including the Polyhedron Reality Shifter and the Shifter Energy Node developed by the Ripple Effect Corporation, as well as a Timebreaker Solidifier for self-defense. Some colorful commotion in Shawn's green room leads him to the dead body of Branch, and a manuscript page describing what just happened up to this very moment. The agent appears out of Randy nowhere and is very upset that Branch is dead. She tries to tell Shawn something very important, but he is doored out of there to another reality where haircuts don't exist. He finds the trailer that the version of himself that lives in this reality lives in, and you know it's his because it has a whiteboard full of insane rambling. This one mainly focuses on the different multiverse variants of himself and the red-headed woman, as well as theorizing that Door is hunting Shawn Ashmore's because one of them is destined to either stop or replace him, and since he doesn't know which one, he's just killing all of them. There's also this visual, which is either telling us that Shawn is trapped in his own spiral, or just explaining what "it's not a loop, it's a spiral" means. Thanks to his conversation with Sam earlier, Shawn knows he has to find the energy node so he can escape this reality through the Luma Vista TV, and he's guided by the voice of his doppelganger to its location. He charges the PRS and steps over his dead counterpart to ride the wave to another world, this noir-themed Ocean View hotel. This world is both wilder and more serene, as Shawn is attacked by Timebreakers, while he explores the hotel looking for the next energy node. The only notable room in the Ocean View this time around is the Tango Lobby, as it has Ati's song Heroes Tango playing on the radio. A song introduced in Control that I haven't mentioned until now because it's confusing.
Yksin sankar yön syvemmälle matkaa pois. Se taakka hänen harteillaan, kuin lupaus aina ois.
The song seems to be both about Alan Wake and Jack Joyce, the protagonist from Quantum Break, as Ahti sings about the promises they made to return to their loved ones and their endless struggle to do so. The lyrics definitely feel more targeted toward Alan, but its placement in Shawn's episode is definitely intentional. And the Thomas Zane poster might also imply he's grouped in with them, but his love is dead, so I don't really know how it would apply. Shawn finds the next energy node, and it's clear by now that these energy nodes were the polyhedrons that Tim Breaker was dreaming about, and possibly the Chronon field regulator from Quantum Break as well. Tim surfs the channel straight into the comic book that was on the counter of the Ocean View Hotel, basically allowing Remedy to explain more of their world without that pesky gameplay getting in their way. Shawn is in the Ripple Effect Corporation, where he reunites with the Agent, who explains the multiverse as a cosmic ocean, or the Sea of Night, which is home to the conceptual, fictional, real, and more real than real.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
I don't see how you could possibly be confused at this moment. She talks about how all the different people throughout the multiverse are linked to the versions of themselves by energy that ripples through realities, showing Shawn and his different appearances in this story, what I think is meant to be Sam Lake, Alex Casey, and Max Payne, and most interestingly of all, Alan Wake, Scratch, and Thomas Zane. Next, she reveals what she knows about Warlin Door's origin, or his Dorigin, how he accessed a parallel reality that allowed him to access all realities, and with this one version of him existing across all realities, it killed all the other versions of him. I only know of one parallel reality that gives people access to different realities, and wouldn't you know it, all those realities are behind different doors. Shawn's about to say something to the Agent before he leaves, but she already knows what he's about to say, so he's got nothing left to do but attempt to find Door and stop him once and for all. This next reality is an old-school, side-scrolling arcade beat-em-up where Shawn fights against waves and waves of time breakers while a chiptune version of Heroes Tango plays in the background. Door is impressed by Shawn's work and asks him to join him, which Shawn declines. He then rides to a dead corner of the multiverse, seemingly one of the many dead realities Door has left in his wake. He escapes that reality and somehow ends up in the Zork reality, meaning the next few minutes of this video are going to be little else than a black screen with white text on it. Now that's peak content. I'd say that's content worthy of a like and subscribe. Apparently this is a conceptual reality close to the beginning of time where nothing existed but words, so anything he can focus on becomes a real concept. He focuses on the red-headed woman and another version of her appears. This one is a dancer named Lisa with a spiral necklace. Shawn says he came back for her like he said he would, and apparently that's been said across many realities. I think that means it's time to get some new material. They live a happy life together, but Lisa's dance career falls on hard times, so Shawn rents them a cabin on a caldera in the Pacific Northwest for some time away.
Hey, I've seen this one. This is a classic.
Her nightmares about the multiverse makes Shawn open up to her about everything, and she obsesses over the multiverse to the point that she takes Shawn's old equipment and disappears into the caldera, leaving only her spiral pendant behind. He remembers that he's here to find the Master of Many Worlds, so focuses on the door he needs to get to. He hangs the spiral pendant on the door and it opens, bringing him face to face with the Master of Many Worlds, who is shaping this reality with his words. And that's a wrap on episode 3. I mean this in the most positive way possible. What the f*** was that? You give us 2 episodes of fun little side stories with fan favorite characters f***ing about for an hour and follow up with a deep dive into the grander rules and lore of the universe as a whole? Obviously there's a lot to explain here, and I think it's best to start with the overall mystery, then get down to the more minute aspects. All 3 of these episodes have one key thing in common. They all end the exact same way, with the protagonist of the episode finding Alan Wake, which tells us that these stories were written by Alan before the events of the second game as an attempt to have other people help him escape, hoping the fiction he wrote would come true and these people would lead him out of the dark place. And it's possible that these stories did have an impact on the real world, but since Alan didn't have as much mastery as he does now, it wasn't the way he intended.
The process to change reality is so delicate, to be true in just the right way and still find a way past our flaws. So many drafts, so many photographs, so many lives lived outside of time.
In episode 1, Rose hears Alan talk to her through a singing fish, a book, and a deer. And in Alan Wake 2, she gets messages from Alan from a bunch of random places. In episode 2, Jesse confronts a shady government organization infested with monsters to find her brother. And in Control, Jesse confronts a shady government organization infested with monsters to find her brother. And then episode 3 is just its own beast. But this could potentially be our answer for whether or not Alan wrote the events of Control. Maybe he saw glimpses of Jesse's story and attempted to use that to his advantage in episode 2, and in doing so, unknowingly set in motion the events of Control. Then we get to episode 3, which may very well have established the rules of the Remedy connected universe, with the multiverse being an endless sea of possibility operating under different rules of reality and having the capacity to seep into one another through dreams and inspiration. Now, this is all a story written by Alan Wake, so we don't know how accurate this reflects the actual world. He could have made it all up for all we know, but with his ability to see other people and events, it's not hard to believe that he's basing this off the truth, especially if this episode was written after the events of Alan Wake 2's final draft, where Alan calls himself the Master of Many Worlds for the first time. Time isn't linear in the Dark Place, so it's entirely possible. Regardless, the most important part of this episode actually isn't how it relates to Alan Wake, but how it relates to Quantum Break. So yeah, I'm gonna have to review that at some point.
Can't I just have a break? Can't I just have one break?
Quick summary, Jack Joyce works with Beth Wilder to prevent the end of time while being hunted by the head of Monarch Solutions and his old friend Paul Serene and Monarch CEO Martin Hatch. And now, quick spoilers, Quantum Break's time travel operates under the Novikov self-consistency principle. Or, for an easier point of reference, the Harry Potter rules. Time travelers can't change the past, because when the past was the present, their future selves were already there, so whatever happened was a result of them being there. And thanks to time travel shenanigans, Jack and Beth find out that the Ground Zero event that provided a huge boost to Monarch's Chronon development was a result of the two of them traveling back to when that event happened, 2010, and trying to stop Paul Serene. Also, Jack finds out that Beth died in the Ground Zero event in 2010, and since it's the past, the game is set in 2016, there's nothing Jack can do about it. When he first met Beth in 2016, her future was already set, because her future is the past. Anyway, the game ends with Jack traveling back in time to the start of the game and seeing Beth during a stutter, where everyone and everything without Chronon powers is frozen in time and space. He walks up to her and promises, "I'll come back for you." And this DLC seems to imply that it's a multiversal constant of sorts, meaning that in every reality, these two always find each other and are always put in a situation where he tells her he'll come back for her. It would explain how this version of Jesse or Beth, Lisa, or whatever, who studies the multiverse, knew what Shawn was going to say. Also, Shawn says it in his opening Timebreaker monologue. So I think there's a pretty strong chance we see more of this in Control 2, whenever that comes out. Maybe even the Lake House, if Jesse is a part of that, where she meets Tim Breaker and they continue their endless saga. Speaking of endless sagas, this might also explain what Alan meant at the end of the final draft when he was talking about how different versions of himself and Alice have been living this story. It could be another multiversal constant that Alice and her counterparts get trapped in the dark place, and Alan and his counterparts dedicate their everything to getting her back. It would also explain why Thomas Zane looks like Alan Wake if he's Alan Wake from another universe, only he didn't save his Alice. It would not explain how he ended up in Alan's universe, but I'm sure we'll get some answers about 20 years from now. Finally, this episode really sets up Warlin Door to be the big bad of the entire Remedy connected universe, as he's now linked to Alan Wake, Shawn Ashmore's characters, and Courtney Hope's characters, the three big heroes of the universe. Also Saga, if you want to include her, but I don't. Both Door and Alan are masters of many worlds. Door is hunting all the different versions of Shawn Ashmore in hopes of killing the one that can stop him, and the link between Shawn and Courtney's characters means that she's a part of it too. Not to mention Jesse hearing about Door from Dylan, and Jesse quite possibly having access to the facility that Warlin Door uses to traverse the multiverse. If the Ocean View Motel is a dimension that connects all realities, with each one being behind a different door, it would make sense where the name Warlin Door came from. And the Door's door could possibly contain all the other doors that lead to the infinite realities that exist. This is supported by the fact that the place is called the Ocean View Motel. Remember, REC Jesse called the multiverse the Sea of Night, so the name of the motel could potentially be a reference to the fact that it oversees the entire multiverse. Maybe the Masters of Many Worlds have the ability to open all the doors in the Ocean View. Jesse was only able to see into 2 of the doors and can only go into 1 of them. I think that's enough theorizing for now, though. Let's bring this home so I can finally take a quantum break from this madness. I didn't go into this DLC with any expectations, so I can't really say I was disappointed or shocked with what's on offer, but I can say that I fucking loved pretty much all of it. Episodes 1 and 3 provide the perfect dichotomy of this whole franchise, with Number One Fan being this intentionally cheesy, over-the-top action rom-com like a bad fanfiction come to life, and Timebreaker being a very serious cosmic horror adventure about a man being chased by a powerful and merciless killer hunting him and his doppelgangers throughout the multiverse. Episode 2 sort of ties into that as well, showing the horror elements of the franchise, but it's easily the weakest episode. I'm pretty sure it's the shortest as well. Episodes 1 and 3 each took about an hour, and episode 2 only took me about 40 minutes. It felt like they were intentionally holding back for some reason, or like they wanted to get Jesse in the game but couldn't nail down exactly how to do it. The biggest criticism I can think of is that it didn't really answer a whole lot of questions after the very vague, almost non-ending that was the entirety of the main game's final act. There were a few grander details here and there that I tried to piece together, but that's about it. I don't think anyone was really asking for mostly meaningless what-if stories after the credits rolled. I'm almost certain the Lake House will be a lot more story-driven and serious, though if it's anything like Control's AWE DLC, then it could be focused more on setting up Control 2 instead of answering the lingering questions of Alan Wake 2. The final score for Alan Wake 2's Night Springs DLC is a 9 out of 10. And I feel the need to mention that my rankings for DLCs is not equal to my rankings for full games. Meaning I don't think this DLC has as much quality as the main game, or a game like BioShock. But for a DLC, it's very strong and has a lot going for it. I loved following the different characters in wild scenarios and getting glimpses into the larger world these games take place in, though I would have preferred a bit more focus on answering some of the more annoying, lingering questions from the main game. The DLC looks just as stunning as the rest, especially episode 3 and all the different art styles and gameplay they go with. It's very interesting. And the heavier action focus in episode 1, and accidentally in the other ones, helped give them a different feel to stand apart. Now, I've debated long and hard about what series to cover next, so I decided to turn it over to the jury. And, well, it seems they've come back with a verdict. Any objections?
Continue.